Let's go to the next one. Cancer, one of the most scariest. Alzheimer's probably right up there. Cancer, also very scary disease. Tell us what we know about cancer and sleep. In particular, I was astonished to hear and kind of reading your notes in the preparation of this about how sleep was identified as for night shift workers.
Yeah.
Right. Night shift work itself was identified as a probable carcinogen. Tell us about that by the World Health Organization.
Yeah. So that's an important fact. And I just want to repeat that, which is that the WHO has classified shift work as a probable carcinogen.
So these are people, doctors, nurses, firefighters, police officers. These are people
anyone who's working the night shift, who's
working
trying to switch their circadian rhythm from day to night. And usually it's not like you're working every day. So then you try to switch back for part of the week so that you can be with your family and your friends and have a quote normal life, right? And then you're going back into that night shift mode. And so these are people also on call. So there's sleep disruption, there's loss of sleep, but that switch of trying to basically strong arm your body and brain from a daytime circadian rhythm, which is extremely hardwired, going back forever, right? We're active in the day. We're not nocturnal beings, and so our entire brain is dialed for that. But when you try to switch that, it causes a number of different disruptions in the body, which can lead to cancer. And this is one area that I'm super passionate about. We've done a lot of work with first responders, with firefighters, and police. And
through your clinic, you mean?
Through our clinic, yeah. We have a program called Protect Wellness, where we put them through a 4 to 6 month long comprehensive health program, wellness program, to really target some of the key areas that are causing increased mortality and morbidity. I don't know if you know, but the top 2 ways that firefighters die are cancer and suicide.
Wow.
Right?
I didn't know.
And suicide is a top killer for all first responders, across the board: firefighters, police, medical, veterans. It's just so. And that risk, we can touch on that later. But there's also, the risk of psychiatric disruption is also greater with sleep disruption. But to your question, going back to cancer for a sec, again, shift work that disrupted circadian rhythm. In fact, Denmark actually pays women who had to work night shifts. If they get breast cancer, it pays them workers' compensation.
That's crazy, isn't that? Right? Like,
right?
that's just nuts.
Right.
Well, hats off to Denmark.
Right.
But also, how crazy is that? And today's podcast is also about it's sounding the alarm, but also, you're a doctor. I'm sure at some point in time in your career, residency, whatever it might have been, you were probably working at night, right? You probably are doing some sort of shift work in your rotations or whatever it might be.
Yep.
And so there's some aspects of life that are just there. They're gonna have to be there. And we're doing our best in between to minimize the damage.
Totally.
Or if it was something that we did in the past, we're trying to correct that by being even more serious about our sleep now, right? We can't change the past. You might even be in a situation where you have to be a shift worker, a nurse, a patrol guard, something like that. But at least when you can, you get serious about your sleep for the protection of your health and also for the protection of your family's health too, because they depend on you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that we could go deep on that actually. Some of the thoughts and ideas that we've worked in collaboration with firefighters to try to build them a more nuanced schedule and sort of interventions. For example, and for to your point, in my medical school and medical residency, so many disrupted nights of sleep, and it still affects me to this day. I still am. I would. I'm not an awesome sleeper. I'm a light sleeper. I get disrupted easily. But I've done a lot of work on myself and using wearables, using devices to show me the data, and playing around with the different permutations of interventions. Right. So. But for shift work, for example, we can spend a minute on that. On any shift, if you're up all night, there's kind of a fork in the road when it comes to the morning time, right? Did you have a super busy night where you got very little sleep, or did you have a quieter night where you got a decent amount of sleep? And that dictates what you're going to do that day, right? So if you got a decent amount of sleep, you might go home and go exercise, have breakfast, hang out with your family, get some errands done, etc. But if you really just got trashed and didn't sleep at all, you need to rest, right? And so we actually have a decision point in our work there with the firefighters and the police. It's like, okay, make that decision first thing in the morning. What are you going to do when you get home, right? So first thing, make sure you're safe getting home. Like the risk of accidents is way, way higher. It's been documented in many studies.
When you don't sleep, your
If
risk
you
of an
haven't
accident is
slept,
higher.
absolutely, yeah. Cardiovascular events and heart attacks and accidents are some of the two most concerning areas. But so with shift work, if you had a difficult night and you didn't sleep much, we actually say, okay, when you're driving home, again, assuming you're safe, rest if you can't, drive home safely first. Then you drive home, but put your blue light blocking glasses on while you're driving home, trying to keep your brain thinking that it's still, not time to wake up, right? Trying to block a little bit of that blue light from hitting your eyes. And when you get home, have a little bit of water, maybe a light meal if you need it, or don't, if you can avoid it, and go and sleep. And don't sleep for too long, sleep for 2 or 3 hours and get that recharge, and then get up and treat that day as a very delicate day where you're not going to go big. You're not going to go for a big mountain bike ride. You're not going to exercise hard. You're going to try to avoid stressful situations. You're not going to drink alcohol. You're not going to eat sugar. So these are all other factors which are stressors on the body, right? So you really just pay attention to the whole menu, if you will, of what things are going to cause my body as an organism stress. And you really try to minimize those, right? And then the next day, hopefully, you go to bed early, try to get that recharge on a normal cycle. And the next day, you go about having a normal day, right? But then as you're preparing for your next call day, you also go into that reset resilience mode. And so you avoid all those stressors, right? You get up early, you get some morning light, you exercise, you avoid alcohol, you avoid sugar, you eat a healthy diet, you time your meals right, all that stuff, right? So you can really sort of create this on-off switch of all the factors that we can control. We rely on our first responders and our medical workers and all these folks who are working overnight. There's not really a choice of do you or don't you have them do it, but there's a lot of variables along the way that you can play with and mitigate from a lifestyle or functional medicine point of view.
It's a great reminder, and I love that protocol. That's awesome. That's going to help a lot of people. All right, let's talk about natural killer cells as it's related to cancer, because that's another thing that sleep does. Can you chat about that?
Yeah. So natural killer cells are sort of this roving, part of our immune system that goes out searching for, things either to kill, bacteria, fungi, viruses, et cetera, or also for cancer cells, for aberrant cells that shouldn't be there, right? And studies have shown that just with one night of poor sleep, you actually see about a 70% reduction in the activity of these natural killer cells. So pretty profound of just that surveillance system. And I think this is for a variety of reasons. There's, the immune side of it, but there's also the hormonal side, right? So not sleeping is a stressor on your body, and therefore we are going to have an increase of cortisol and stress hormones. And this part of your immune system, much of your immune system is most active at night, similar to the brain lymphatic system, in part because that's when your cortisol is the lowest. And cortisol, as we know, from taking a steroid, is suppressive to the immune system. So cortisol is low, immune system comes up. The tone of the immune system, these cells are actually is what's called diapedesis. They're roving through the walls of vessels and kind of moving through the vessels and cruising around looking for these aberrant cells and again things that shouldn't be there, and taking care of them, eliminating them or calling in a signal for other immune cells to come. So that decrease of those natural killer cells is pretty profound. They've also shown, in a mice study, that the cancers of mice who were sleep deprived grew 200% faster than those mice who had been receiving adequate sleep. So there's a variety of different research in this area, which is pretty important and telling. And again, multiple pathways, right?
All right. You were talking about our immune system. There's other data outside of cancer that's related to sleep and the immune system. And again, our goal here is to give you a sign, to give you a reminder. We're not sharing anything on this podcast here that people don't know about. But in one podcast episode on sleep and really diving in and presenting this masterclass, the goal is to remind you to take something that we don't often take seriously, or don't take seriously enough. And there are so many forces in our modern life that are working against having good sleep.